from Wolfville and Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We start our events by acknowledging the land on which and in which we host these events. And I also like to take a moment to sort of just take a second to reflect on what that means and not just acknowledge the land for the sake of acknowledging the land. Our last virtual event that we had a couple of months ago was about music, the world of music, and it was held on World Music Day. And this evening, as you know, is about visual arts in the community. And when I think about acknowledging the land and I think about the Indigenous culture, it is a very easy step to think about music and art and how the Indigenous culture very much prides themselves on their music and their art. You know, their clothing, their jewelry, like all of those things that mean so much in their culture. So hopefully we can chat a little bit about visual arts and what it means to all of us, and maybe in some regard think about Indigenous art and Indigenous expression of cultural arts. My name is Oonagh Proudfoot, and I am the Executive Director of Alumni Affairs at Acadia University. And I am joined with three guest speakers this evening to chat with us about what you're doing in the world, generally speaking, but in the world of visual arts specifically. So folks on the line, we have a few guests joining us this evening, but as I mentioned, we also record these events. And once we do a little bit of editing, not too much, we add it to our virtual library. So anyone who did sign up tonight who wasn't able to make it, or if Zach, your grandfather, has difficulty signing in, he will still be able to see the event once we get the recording live in our virtual library. And as I mentioned, we have lots of people who check stuff out months and even years after we have these events. So great stuff. So our three guest speakers this evening, and in no particular order, because of course you kind of go, do I do it alphabetically? Do I do it through a year of graduation? Do I, you know, so in no particular order, we have three guests with us this evening who graduated from Acadia University, and I will take a moment to introduce them, but they then will have an opportunity to share a little bit more of their stories with us. I mentioned question asking. You certainly, for folks on the line, can turn off click off your mute button and engage your camera and ask questions like that if you wish, but you can also just put them in the chat function, and I'll keep an eye out and see if there's questions for our speakers as we move along. So Zack Goldsmith, class of 2020. Zachary Goldsmith is a full-time photographer and proud Acadia graduate, Bachelor of Theology in 2020. His work focuses on people, with his primary subject matter consisting of weddings, portraits, and business promotion. Originally from British Columbia, Zack moved to Wolfville in 2017 and fell in love with Nova Scotia, like so many of us. He is now based in Halifax, where he continues to enjoy connecting with the local community and using his work to capture the best of people. Thank you for joining us, Zack. Next up, Gabrielle Bailey, also class of 2020. Gabrielle Bailey is the co-founder of the commercial and editorial photography company Studio 224, located in Halifax, Nova Scotia. She produces uncontrived, emotional, and intimate work that holds true to the art form of photography, working with clients like Warner Brothers, Dash Hudson, Tourism Nova Scotia, and Parks Canada. Gabrielle spent her education and early career in digital marketing, particularly with tech startups, powering a smooth transition to running her own show with her partner in life and in business. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it.
It's Kinnan. It's like McKinnon without the Mac in front of it.
Perfect. So her partner in life and business, Kinnan. Studio 224 is currently building a woodland atelier. Wow, I don't even know that one either, Gabrielle. I'm so sorry. Near
okay.
Lawrence, Nova Scotia, opening in late 2023. I'm sure we will hear more about it. A space for visual arts to create and connect. And then we have Wes Booth, class of 2014. Wes lives, breathes, and eats the stories he tells. With over 10 years of experience, Wes has been involved with many local success stories. He takes immense pride in his work and where he lives. A graduate of Acadia University, Wes combines his marketing background with his creativity to bring storytelling solutions to clients at his boutique studio, Canopy Creative. Canopy Creative partners with local and international brands to bring more meaning to their stories through strategy, web, content, and distribution. Wes is self-taught and learns best through doing, like many of us. He enjoys sharing what he has learned and exchanging ideas and approaches with the next generation. That's a great segue into the conversation from all three of you, and clearly a lot of learning for me. So I'm going to start by asking each of you to share with us a little of what you're willing to share with us about your own stories and how you ended up where you are. So I look at well, a Bachelor of Theology and now what you're doing, Zack. So a little bit about kind of when you got the bug and how it transformed into what you're doing now. So take a moment or so to think about that. I then have some questions, a couple of which were submitted, and some, of course, that came from me. And I suspect I'll have more as we converse as well. So whoever would like to go first on that little bit of a life lesson or life travel on how you ended up where you are, please do. Gabrielle, I see you smiling first. You get to go.
I'll get myself off mute. Yeah, so my background is in digital marketing. So I've always kind of been in the creative arts space. I was the kid that like drew since they were actually 1 year old kind of thing. So arts have always intrigued me. It's always been something that I've been interested in. So I actually started out at Acadia with the intention of being an accountant, which I very quickly realized was not what I wanted to do. And I went to what I felt was like the most creative major within the business space at that time, which was marketing, which would allow me to kind of either like lean into social media or digital arts of some sort, graphic design even. I wasn't quite sure. So I went kind of headfirst in digital marketing. I was working for the Students Union doing events and promotions as well, which was super fun. I'm a huge event planner. And yeah, that's something that I'm very passionate about and I love to do still to this day. Another reason why the studio we're currently building is probably going to be an event space eventually as well. Or we're like hoping to buy or build an event space in the future. And that also relates to photography in its own way. But I actually didn't get truly into photography until I met my partner, Kinnan, who was a landscape photographer and a big traveler, and he always had a camera on him. And my relationship with photography at that time was just like phone content, really, social media content, very basic. And then he introduced me to cameras and the rest is history. I kind of picked up more the portrait side of things and he picked up the landscape side of things and we just kind of merged.
I'm particularly interested in hearing more about the event space. Always an ulterior motive. So I have questions already, just based on that short piece that you shared with us, Gabrielle. But I will wait until we get through intros of the others, because depending on how it goes and how many questions we have, you'll have different perspectives, I'm sure, on the answers. So how about we head over to Wes next and provide you with the platform to share your story.
Sure. Thanks, Oonagh. For me, it was complete opposite. I did start with marketing as well at Acadia and did have kind of a focus on digital marketing. At the time, I was 2014 graduate, so this was kind of when digital marketing was at least a new conversation for rural parts. A lot of these owner-operators who have been in business for a long time were curious and were looking at what opportunities that could bring for their business. So I started to do some consulting and worked with Dr. Danny Silver in helping get the Acadia Institute for Data Analytics off the ground, which I was more like on the business development, relationship type thing. Well, that's really where I got a lot of my confidence and a lot of my experience in reconnection with, local businesses and some of the businesses that needed this kind of service, and did some work with Lee Eustace in that, is it the research and innovation, or it's and the Office of Innovation, and I did some work with her on some like local with some local companies. And so I started Canopy Creative mostly to be doing digital marketing back in 2017, and was mostly doing consulting, and had some clients who were more interested in content creation. And at the time that was just starting with phones, and then there was like professional, commercial photographers and videographers. But it was kind of before the real mix of people who grew up on phones or with cameras in their hands and have transitioned to be professional. So I had never seen myself as like being creative. I didn't grow up in kind of that environment. So it was kind of like jumping off the deep end and just trying it. And I really enjoyed it and got I was really fortunate to work with some people who just believed in me right off the hop. I can think of a few here in town. And yeah, it just kind of grew from there. So.
And we'll come back to the next generation piece in your bio, because I'm interested to hear a little bit about that. And I think without getting too far ahead, it probably has a lot to do with how quickly technology is evolving, right? So a generation in technology terms is very short compared to what I would consider a generation, right? So we'll come back around to that. Yeah.
Sure.
Over to you. Oh, sorry, Wes. Sorry.
Nope. I was just saying for sure. Yeah. Good.
Okay, cool. All right, Zach, over to you. How do you go from a bachelor in theology to what you're doing now?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So photography was always a big hobby for me. I remember when I was 12, my first like big purchase that I saved up multiple months of allowance for was like a little Canon point and shoot camera that took AA batteries, and I just took photos of like my Lego and my dog. But it was always an interest. And then fast forward to 2015, I was doing a little bit of backpacking in the UK and started doing some landscape photography. And that's when I started to really find out that I enjoyed it and think about like, why is one photo more appealing than another? What goes into photography, but it still kind of stayed in the realm of hobby. And then fast forward to me moving to Nova Scotia from British Columbia and attending Acadia. I came to study theology. Acadia is quite unique in that it has an evangelical divinity college, but with a secular university, which is one of the only in Canada that I'm aware of. And I was interested in theology and culture and helping kind of connect people. Theology and religion is often something that's very divisive, and people can use beliefs to kind of put people down. And I wanted to do the reverse of that and like help people understand each other more. And so definitely people focus in everything that I was doing, but at the same time had the photography hobby. And I was part of a band for a short amount of time with Daniel McFadden, who's a local folk artist. Myself and a friend took turns being the lead electric guitar player. And so there was a night where I wasn't playing guitar and Dan had like a Canon DSLR. And so I asked to borrow it and take photos of the show. And so I just took a bunch of kind of concert photos. And then I remember like sharing some of those. And then I had another Acadia student who was a music student who was launching an EP reach out to me and ask if I could photograph her EP release. Her name's Catherine Kennedy. Some of you may know of her. And I think I made like $30 and I took photos of it. But I was like, oh, if people like my photography and they'll give me money for it. Like this is a new concept for me, and it was quite exciting. And then, yeah, I just started thinking about, can I make a business out of this? Thinking it would be more of like a side hustle kind of thing. And so I bought a camera, and grad photos is kind of what launched the business. I had a friend who wanted something that was very different than a sort of sit down studio photo. They wanted to be on campus. They wanted to be in front of their favorite residence building. And as far as I'm aware, I was one of the first people to kind of do that on a larger scale, the kind of on campus photos. I know Gab now does a lot of that with her studio, and I've seen others sort of follow. But I wanted to have something that was fun and energetic because a lot of people, your personality shines through in a context, not just on a stool in a studio. Not that there's, not a place for that. I think I did like 60 grad photos my first season, and it was insane and too busy. And I raised my prices because I needed to work less. But then I also got into weddings, and another local business, Sarah Anderson, She owns East Coast Pop-Up Weddings as well as the Wolfville Wedding Chapel. I started working with her a little bit, met her in the Wolfville Farmers Market and recognized her from Instagram and was like, hey, are you that person that like marries people? And got connected. And since then, it's kind of been like a snowball that's continued to go. It became full-time during my undergrad. And then I was working on a master's in theology. But that was a bit much to attempt to do full-time grad school and full-time work, and realized that the kind of academic theology route wasn't giving me as much people time as I wanted. And so decided to sort of stop attending Acadia, finish with the bachelor's, and then do photography full-time, which is where I'm at now.
So hearing your answers, there are so many different roads I can go down, so many questions. I mean, before going further specific to questions about visual arts and photography and digital marketing and all those words, it's just really neat to hear your stories of how, you know, you sort of found where you are and the differences, and how chance encounters and how people in the community being supportive and how meeting somebody who has the same passion. Like, it's just so indicative. I wish the entire graduating class from Acadia this year was hearing this story, was hearing these stories, right? Because so many of them are, how do I know what I'm going to do? How do I make that decision? I'm so stressed out because I don't know what's next. But what I'm hearing from each of you is be open to what your passion is and exploring it, right? So out of the three of you, or out of all of you, do you foresee this being your career? Do you think you'll change gears at any point in time, or do you think the foreseeable future holds this for you?
Yeah, on my end, I see it being a career for me. I strategically kept Studio 224 broad in name and kind of overall what I could do with it, because I knew that I wanted to kind of tie in possibly rental properties, studio spaces, event spaces, that kind of thing. Maybe hire on a team and add video and whatever. So whatever Studio 224 becomes, like, it'll always involve photography, but it'll probably expand from there. And yeah, that's what I see myself doing for the foreseeable future.
Wes or Zach?
Yeah, that's kind of a question mark for me. I definitely think for the next like 3 to 5 years, I'd like to keep on doing this full time. Once you have the freedom and flexibility that self-employment gives, I feel like it'd be difficult to imagine having a boss that tells you when you have to come into work. And the entirety of my immediate family is still in BC, and so being able to go and block time off and travel and see them is really valuable. But I still definitely do enjoy the sphere of theology, and I love teaching. So there's still a passion there that I'd like to explore. I just attended a conference this weekend, and there was someone talking about a lot of the really toxic teachings that many people in church grew up around, like purity culture and sexuality and stuff, and undoing that. And hearing an incredible teacher, I'm like, oh, like I could see myself, teaching in that realm. And so even though I'm not doing anything that's paid in that realm, I think like down the road I could see a shift, but I don't think I would ever like stop photography. I think I would always, like, now that I can do weddings and have the experience to do weddings, if a friend was getting married and wanted me to shoot their wedding, I'd want to do it. And then even since living in Halifax, like I've gotten to do some more commercial work. I did a shoot for Commune Auto. TELUS hired me for a project. I'm like, oh, this is really fun. So I'm in the, like, I don't want to let go of it anytime soon, but if I was 40 and like not a full-time photographer, I wouldn't be totally surprised.
Makes sense. Wes?
Yeah, I mean, for me, since I started Canopy in 2017, it's been up, down, sideways, backwards, frontwards. It's been all over the place. So, if we were 2 years ago and you asked me if I'd still be doing this, I would be not sure, because we were doing a lot of event coverage and a lot of food and beverage, and we were kind of just stopped in, time for a bit in that space. And we had an office in Halifax and a team in Halifax, and had to pump the brakes on all that. And it did kind of give me a lot of time to reflect and think about what the future could look like. And when you have a team, and when you have, overhead, and you have all these things, you sometimes start to be more of a manager and managing people, managing the business, than actually executing on the creative and managing the creative side and, you know, being involved on that. And so now, fast forward, I'm just a one-person shop that subcontracts a lot, works with people like I've worked with Zack, I'd love to work with Gab in the future, and just kind of completely changed what it looks like for me and recommitted. And it wasn't me committing and showing up for the team, it was me committing and showing up for myself and for my clients and for my work. And so, yeah, I'm feeling a lot more confident now because that was the first time I ever did that. Before, it was always for the team and for my clients. I didn't really choose it for me all the time. And now that gives me a lot of confidence that I know that I'm showing up for myself too. So yeah, it's been a big shift for me, and I kind of doubled down in the last year or two. And yeah, I don't know if it will be video. Like, my company's changed in what we do and what we focus on. I don't know. Right now, it's mostly just video production. I don't know if that will be what it is, but I've started to recognize that I really like helping contribute to storytelling and local storytelling and pitching in and doing what I can in that space. So I don't know if it will be commercial. I don't know if maybe it will spin off into my own restaurant, or I'm just throwing things out there, but storytelling in wherever I go and whatever I do, I feel will be a theme. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag answer, but yeah, I learned a lot about myself and where I want to go in the last couple of years that I think is going to lead me into the next few years and beyond.
Okay, I have envy now is what's happening. And you got me at envy right when you started talking. I think, Zack, you said about, you know, going into work every day and reporting to somebody. I was like, okay, wait a second, let's talk. No, I'm just kidding. But in full transparency, part of the reason I asked is because my son is self-employed, right? So I'm kind of like, all right, so talk to me about this, you know, what seems to be more prevalent now than it was sort of when I was in your age and stage. So I appreciate you sharing that with me. And what you just said, Wes, or part of what you just said, segues into a question that I have for each of you, and or the three of you together, and that's whether or not you see each other as competitors or collaborators. But talk to me a little bit about that. And I know, Wes, you said you're more in the video realm, and Zack and Gab are more in the photography realm. But talk to me about what that looks like in terms of collab, because apparently you don't say the whole word anymore. It's all about collabs. Yeah, is it competition or is it collaboration?
Yeah, I can start. That's cool. I would say fully collaboration. I mean, that's one thing that I loved about when I started the business, was everyone was so helpful. And I mean, you know, there's definitely the reality of, like, yeah, someone might choose to hire Gab over me for a photo shoot, but that's also, we have some differences in style, and there's different reasons why people might hire different people. And I think once you acknowledge that and go, okay, there's enough work to go around, you know, business is growing, and actually my business will be served better by helping other people. And I mean, like, yeah, Wes has subcontracted me out. Gab's partner, Kenan, I've second shot a wedding for him. He's second shot multiple weddings for me. We'll refer work to each other. And so, like, frequently if someone reaches out for a wedding and I'm booked, I send them to Gab, like, right away. I'll just, hey, check them out. And so, yeah, I don't think there's any kind of, like, negative, not that there's, like, no one in the space who maybe has that attitude. You're always going to get someone who maybe is has envy or is frustrated that they're not booking something, but you appear to be booking something. But yeah, I find that there's, especially in the Maritimes, just a really friendly, collaborative environment in the creative space. I found recently, since moving to Halifax, I haven't publicly announced yet, which I need to do as I'm saying it, that I live here instead of Wolfville. But I've been, like, bartering with local businesses and starting to do more trades and stuff to get clients that maybe wouldn't normally pay full price for me, because I'm just kind of cold calling them, but I'm making connections with the community, which is huge to kind of business success. And so I don't think I've ever felt like I've had like a competitor, other than in the very basic, you know, sense of someone might hire someone else other than me, but no negativity to that at all.
Wes or Gab?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like a lot of what Zach said, I was going to say too. And kind of adding on to the referral side of things, a lot of our early stage growth in our business came from referrals, like really good ideal client referrals from other people in the industry that just happened to be too busy. And so they would like forward somebody on to us, and it would be a hit and it would be great. And it's a client that we really wanted. And that would kind of help bounce us to the next stage. So that collaborative piece and that referral piece is so huge. And generally speaking, it seems like there's a resounding culture of doing that, particularly like Zach said, in the Maritimes. And obviously there's a lot of population growth happening here right now too. So opportunities are really endless. Like it's kind of difficult to cannibalize each other almost right now. So yeah, collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally echo those words. For me, like I've subcontracted a lot. I've hired people for jobs and all that type of thing. So to me, that's collaboration in the truest form. I think for me personally, like I learned from people who are better than me, and I've piggybacked off of a lot of people in the industry to get to where I am personally today, but also have benefited from the openness and the collaboration. Sure, there's competition, but the big thing is like, and we all touched on it a bit, but growing the industry versus trying to grow your own business, there's bigger opportunity in advocating for good storytelling, good photography, good video. And if you do that, then there's going to be enough work to go around because people are going to value it. They're going to like to work with people that have that kind of attitude and willingness to, even recommend. Like sometimes there's just a type of, videos that I'm just not really feeling confident in delivering what they're looking for. And I'll be like, I know a few people that are definitely better versed. If you want me to be involved, great, but like you definitely don't need that. And then, on the flip side too, like just, I'm not sure where I was going with that, but yeah, it's been great. Like ever since I got into it, there's kind of a bit of, with video specifically, there's people who came from like TV, film, and then there's the people who have come from like cameras in their hands, phones in their hands. And what's been really cool over the last couple of years is there's been more, less hesitation or more effort being made to even bridge some of those gaps. Just people weren't hanging out in the same spots. It wasn't like this us versus them thing, but I've really gotten to benefit and learn a lot from people who have been doing things for a long time, but doing it differently than me, and vice versa. I think crossing over into the TV world a little bit, and never on the big scripted stuff, but it's cool. Or you get to bump into someone like Mark Davison, who's firing more photos than I could ever do in one day. So yeah, it's been awesome.
So again, I've got like 3 different questions burning in my head. So I'm just doing my best to keep track of where we're going to go with the questioning next. So when I think about photography and when I think about videos, when I think about, as a consumer, what I think about is wine. Now bear with me here. I don't know a lot about wine, right? But when I taste wine, I know if I like it or if I don't like it. But if you said to me, why do you like that wine, or what kind of wine is that, or whatever, right? Like that's where I struggle. So this is where I beg for forgiveness on any line of questioning that I have or words that I use that don't make sense in your world. So you need to understand I'm a complete amateur. But my question is, because you've mentioned style, right? So talk to me a little bit about the style that you bring to the work that you do, and whether or not you have that capability, or maybe more importantly, the interest in changing your style so that you can accommodate your client's request. So hopefully that question makes sense, but yeah, share some insight on that.
Yeah, I can talk to that a little bit. In terms of style, I think when it comes to photography, you'll have very distinct kind of visual styles. And a lot of that, it comes down to both composition and what you choose to focus on as far as how you're capturing something. And so you have people who, like, I'll kind of just camp in the wedding world for a moment. You have people who would call themselves like strictly documentary style, where they're hands off, they're a fly on the wall, they're not doing as much kind of crowd control and posing. And then you have the opposite of that. And so like for me, I tell my clients, I'm in the middle. Because I get a lot of people who are uncomfortable being photographed, or like with their wedding or engagement photos, it's the first time they've ever had professional photos and they want some guidance. And so I'm like, yes, I will help you with posing. Yes, I will help create environments where you feel comfortable, but I'll also get those candidates that you want. And so there's kind of that, but then it also comes down to editing. And there's a lot of kind of buzzwords in the industry. So you have like dark and moody would be one very common editing style, where things are really kind of like dim and maybe a bit more grungy. Then you have light and airy, which is really bright. I would be, again, a little bit different. I base my editing style off of like an old Kodak film stock. And so it's vibrant and kind of punchy, but my hope is that it's timeless. And so in 3 decades, when you're sitting down with your spouse looking at your photos, you're not thinking like, what Instagram trend was my photographer following? Like, I want them to look really good, framed for 50 years. As far as changing, that's interesting. Like I have it in my contract that I will like strive to honor my clients' requests, but will like, I have my own artistic style. And so I'm not gonna like cater to something that is different from the work that I'm used to. Because they're hiring me for that, and they're kind of trusting my vision as an artist. And so, you know, when you hire me, it says like my work will be consistent with my prior work. And so if someone hires me, I'm not going to edit something super dark and different. If they have something that's reasonable, like they want a little tweak or something like that, definitely. But it would kind of like, you know, be like hiring a painter who has a certain style and then asking them to paint in a totally different style. Like that's not why you do that. And so, yeah, that's my thought there.
I am learning so much. Gab or Wes? Wes from a video standpoint, or Gab from a stylist standpoint in terms of your photography? Or both, one after the other.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Zack knows we both started from the exact same starting point with our general like foundational style, where it is based off of like an old film stock. And seeing both of us grow into our own styles from that one foundational seed that was the same is just, it's so fascinating to me, because it's like you can see little parts of our own personalities coming out in it. Yeah, I would say like generally speaking, mine and Kinnan's style, and you can even see differences between Kinnan and I despite being in the same business, but it's, yeah, very, very film inspired. We do shoot quite a bit of film, and we're starting to shoot film for weddings now, which is really exciting. Lots to learn there. We're definitely not developing our own film, but maybe we'll get there at some point. But yeah, our style, like Zack mentioned as well, kind of like in between the documentary candid versus posed formal. I have been almost leaning, I feel like I was way over here when it came to like candid documentary, and I'm starting to come back a little bit now, which again, I think it's like trend cycles pushing people, but yeah, I'm really loving the, like, if you imagine those sort of like 1800s portraits in lockets style, where it's that really like nice kind of poised portrait. I'm loving that lately too. Mixing that in with candid stuff it's just really special and storytelling. But yeah, I think Zack hit the nail on the head with a lot of the comments that I was going to say too.
Wes, thank you,
Yeah.
Gabrielle. And full disclosure, I mute myself because I have 2 dogs and they're both attention seeking right now. So if you see me kind of doing this, I'm probably speaking to the dogs. So go ahead, Wes.
Yeah, for me, it's a little different, just because I usually have clients and I'm trying to figure out and help them get a solution. If I'm doing something outside of the video realm, that is, because I still do have clients where I work through, you know, web dev, branding, copywriting. I still do some of that, but it's really only when they value or want to use storytelling as their strategy. The reason why I started to pick that up again is because I was doing videos and they weren't necessarily being effective because they weren't being made for the end solution, or it was not a thought out solution. It was just, I need a video, and then through the working with them, discovering that it can be more than just a video. It needs to live somewhere. It needs to do something. It needs to be either aligned with a brand if it's creating one, or a pre-existing one. It needs to speak and sound and look the same way. So have gone back into kind of managing more creative direction for smaller, mid-sized businesses, and then working with them to do that. So in saying that, as a videographer, I have my own style, more on coming from documentary and storytelling, but I am trying to challenge that too and come back more like Gab as well, because there's a time and place when you need to make someone look pretty in a chair when you're doing an interview, or you have a nice product and you don't have great natural light and you got to light it and create more of a staged environment. But yeah, back to like my client stuff, I will go find the right person for them if I'm in a managing position versus strictly an execution on the video side.
I might hop in there quickly too. I just thought of something while you were speaking. Zack had mentioned like stylistic composition, and then there's also like your editing style. And this doesn't happen very often, but in some like very specific cases, I've had commercial clients that require the raw images, which would be like the straight out of camera unedited, for context. So you'll have situations where they are looking just for the style that you shoot, and then they'll take that, and their marketing team or their whatever creative team they have will be able to edit those images themselves. So let's say they're very stylistically different from me, but the images that I took in general fit the profile that they're looking for, and then they can go and edit it the way that they want to. So that's also a possibility. We've had that happen a few times. And it's a little bit easier for us too. It saves us quite a few hours. But then you kind of miss out on that little fun editing part at the end that gives it the style that you're used to. Yeah, I just wanted to drop that in there for changing for clients per se, but.
And that, brings up so much in terms of questions that I have. And I guess it also comes back to, the individual, the client's style and what it is they're looking for, right? I take lots of pictures because I love taking pictures and I love remembering things, and videos as well. Like I love remembering things. My phone is full now. Am I ever going to organize them? Who knows? But, I come from I took Polaroids, right? So when they first were a thing, not when they came back and were all fun and funky, right? And every time you took a picture with your camera, you only had a roll of 24 exposures, So that's long gone. And this is segueing into my next question. So, whatever percentage of the population has a phone now, and most phones have some capability of photographs as well as video. Obviously, your fancier phone has better editing qualities and so on and so forth. So what I'm seeing and hearing from you as well is, and we were just talking about this at the office today, that there's photography and video around engagements and around gender reveal parties, and it just feels like there's so much more opportunity for photography and video because people are capturing these moments that back in my day we never would have thought of pulling the camera out for, but they also have cameras and they're doing some of their own work. So how does that pan out? I mean, you've all said that you have work coming to you and sometimes you refer it off and you collaborate and that type of thing, but is there some, from a artist's point of view, from each of you, how does that come off when you're you have people saying, oh yeah, no, I take all my own pictures, or yeah, I do all my own video. Talk to me a little bit about how you encourage them to take it to that next level and several levels higher with your work and your editing.
I think my first thought that comes up is awesome. I take iPhone pictures too, all the time. And the client that wants to do that probably just won't even reach out to me in the first place, and that's totally okay. And if they do, it's probably for something special or something that they want to splurge on, or it's a bigger project where they recognize that like having a professional image, if you will, is just of more value to them at that point. So there's definitely no like moments where I would encourage people like, oh no, you don't do that, do this instead. But I also see the value in, having a super quick mobile camera that you can use at any point that's good enough quality that if you want to make a memory with it, you absolutely can. I know there's like a whole new industry now for like wedding content creators that take phones and iPads and things like that to weddings, and they'll shoot content for you in addition to having photographers and videographers at their weddings as well. So yeah, I think it's just kind of like a different stream. It's almost like a bonus add-on. And most of the events that I'm at, or weddings or commercial things, like we were shooting a huge commercial project and half of the staff were taking iPhone photos the whole time anyway, you know what I mean? So it's around, and obviously there does need to be boundaries with it sometimes, but yeah, I just kind of let it be.
I get caught up in how many people are doing it themselves and missing the moment, right? So for me right away, I'm like, yeah, hire somebody else to do it so I can actually be in the moment with whatever's going on in front of me, right? But also in my line of work, I mean, as you would all well know, we have a lot of use for photography and video, and even beginning to search for what it is you're looking for and articulating what you want that end product to look like is so challenging for those of us who are lay people in the arena, right? But back to that wine analogy, for me, when I look at something, I'm like, yeah, I really like that, or no, I don't like that kind of thing. So it's got to be challenging to sort of take it to that level, right? Wes, in terms of video, you talked a lot about the local community and telling local stories. And I'm going to ask each of you this. Tell me about a project that you're particularly happy with. Like if I said to you, you're applying for, a contract and you submit one piece of work, what would that be for each of you?
It's a tough question for sure, but I think one that's relevant and it's new and it's in response to kind of the pandemic and being innovative is with the Wolf Farmers Market. So the Wolf Farmers Market is many things, but one thing that I don't think we appreciate enough is it's so much more than a farmer's market. And yeah, we might be thinking, yeah, it is, but like in ways that we wouldn't even know, especially for supporting their vendors. And so, yeah, they give them a roof over their head and bring people through the doors, but they're becoming more and more of a incubator and helping them seek out new ways to grow, to find new customers, whether through the WFM to Go or this initiative called Food Art Nature. And so they're applying for grants, they're trying to find funding, they're trying to find new ways for them to sell their products. Like they're doing an incredible job and just a force. And so they had a group of people get together and start talking about what they could do to make tourism a piece of that. And they started a group with the working name that's now Food Art Nature. And they created a suite of different experiences to help bridge the gap between, maybe it's a consumer, maybe it's a client, maybe it's just someone visiting, to actually start rolling up their sleeves, walking, driving, biking, whatever, to the farm and doing the thing, or learning more about herbal medicine or cooking with herbs. I didn't know it, a bounty of herbalists in the valley. I knew there was a few, but I didn't know how many. And so, yeah, that was a really cool project that I worked with the farmers market and we were brought on for the content side of things. So telling the different experience partners' story and then kind of what the experience is. And it grew from there, and we actually helped them launch the entire booking platform and kind of moving forward with their strategy as they transition into kind of having someone manage that. They brought in another company to help with that type of support. And so that was just really cool, because I've worked with the farmers market in different capacities before. And it's certainly something that I really value and appreciate, but it was really cool to get to know them more intimately, work with them, and also for them to be able to have access to this kind of funding to get the right material they needed to try and, tell their stories. Because it was something that was really cool and special. So on so many different levels.
That's really neat to hear, Wes. Again, from the outside looking in as a consumer and as a community member, watching the evolution of the farmers market is cool in and of itself without knowing half of what you just said, right? And a couple of us have mentioned, excuse me, the pandemic a couple of times in this conversation, but that is certainly one place where the farmers market and everything that the farmers market had to offer went from here to here, right? I think many of us did in terms of that evolution. We wouldn't be doing virtual events for the alumni office if it hadn't been for the pandemic, right? Thanks for that. Gab and Zach, your projects that you're most proud of.
Who's going to go first? Two came to mind for me, and it's funny because I think the highest quantity of shoots I do is usually some form of portrait or wedding kind of thing. But these two projects are commercial projects, and it's something that I'm very passionate about and want to lean into more. The first one, and this is going to sound pretentious, I'm not allowed to talk about it yet, but it's it's the Warner Brothers one. And so that was one of the best projects I've ever worked on. It was so fascinating. And again, that opportunity came from a referral from somebody that I really look up to in the industry locally in Nova Scotia. And lucky for me, she was out of the country when that opportunity came. And yeah, it was such a fascinating project, and a lot of really beautiful kind of behind the scenes photos came out of that. So that's something I'm really, really excited about, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about it soon. I don't know. But the other one I can talk about, and it was for Oyster Fest, and they sent us to a ton of different oyster farms across the province, and we got to go out with the farmers out on the boats, and they were hauling things out of the water. And so we got these amazing action shots, just out broad daylight, all the fishermen, and we were just eating raw oysters right out of the water. It was so fascinating, and the colors were beautiful. It was foggy, misty out on the ocean, and these beautiful boats, and everything's kind of rough looking, and it was exquisite. It was fun to experience and also fun to edit afterwards.
Absolutely. And just you describing it, I mean, I can almost feel being there, right? And that's, as cliche as it is, I'm like, a picture says 1,000 words. I mean, it truly does, though, right? It's there's a reason that expression exists. Over to you, Zach.
Yeah, I just opened up on my other monitor a gallery of work. I'm like, which ones did I like the most? It's so hard to pick. One thing that I guess was a bunch of different shoots but under one umbrella was when I was starting to build my business. I pitched an idea to the Wolfville Business Development Corporation of basically having subsidized photo shoots available for local businesses. They haven't told me that partnership is stopped, but maybe now that I don't live there anymore, it is. I don't know. But basically, any local business that was part of the catchment area in Wolfville could hire me, or there were a couple other photographers as options, and they would get a portion of the shoot subsidized. And I loved that kind of endeavor because each business was so different, and it's part of why I've really been enjoying the business promo side of things. Is not that you don't get uniqueness in weddings, for sure. And I've shot everything from 4 guests to 160 to flying in a helicopter up a mountain to your typical, in an old church. They're very different, but there is still a lot of sameness in terms of kind of posing couples and stuff like that. Stuff will overlap. Whereas with this kind of Wolfville project I was doing, I took photos of someone getting acupuncture done and like sports therapy, but then also shooting photos for like the menu for Patty's, like the pub, or different shots for different restaurants, or headshots for kind of solo entrepreneurs. And it was so fun just because it was a challenge, because I'd be walking into an environment that like I've never photographed someone getting acupuncture before. So then how do I make this look really good? And how do I highlight this thing that I don't know anything about? And so that was cool because it was kind of showing off the uniqueness, but then there was also the underpinning. And when I pitched the project, I was saying like, moving here from BC, I loved how friendly all of like the employees and owners were. Like I very quickly started to learn the first names of the various business owners downtown. And I wanted to be able to help them convey that kind of character behind the local business to the kind of outside world. And so in every shoot that I did, I would make sure I got some really nice portraits of the business owner or staff in context to show some of that. Because so often, you know, we'll see product photos if it's a service-based business, but we don't maybe see the person behind it. And so, yeah, that was really, really a fun time to get to do that.
And again, just visions that I'm having as you're explaining, you know, all of that. But I think what really pops into my mind is I was chatting earlier today about this event tonight, and the comment was made to me, well, what do you know about visual arts? I said very little, which is why I'm really looking forward to this event tonight, so that I can start to think about all the different angles that you've been sharing with us. Question for you, and this is, you know, I think it was tossed out to you as a potential topic to cover tonight, and I'm not sure that there was necessarily a lot of feedback or reaction to it, because I think it's still so unknown to so many of us, and that's the role of AI. And do you see glimmers of that influence in your work yet? I completely missed the boat in our last event when we were talking about music in the community, because I think AI in terms of the music world has sort of really jumped in there, right? Like everybody's writing their own songs for their spouses at their weddings. So I'm not sure if you're seeing glimmers of it yet in your world. So I'll pause for a second just to see if you either have or have some idea where you think it might go with AI and AI influence.
I use it daily in my work in terms of like helping me with things. I think there's definitely lots of questions and also like ethical concerns around AI generating content. That's a big one. I know in the photography sphere, there's people talking about like pivoting because there's concerns that certain things like product photography, for example, I've seen, you know, someone will take a photo of a product and it'll generate these landscapes that normally you would spend hours to create, and it's kind of done instantly. And so there's maybe some concerns there around, is this going to lose people jobs? But I think where I've seen it be really helpful is taking tasks that are very mundane and that I don't enjoy and that I used to spend hours and hours and hours on and make it simpler. And so the two brief examples are, I use a program that helps me to narrow photos down to kind of cull. And so if I shoot a wedding and let's say I have like Gab's partner Kenan second shooting for me, I might end up with 4,500 photos that then need to get narrowed down to a 600 photo, 700 photo gallery. And so that software will take duplicates, because the beauty of digital is when they're having their first kiss, I'll just be, you know, taking 10 photos, but it'll pick the one that it thinks is the best. It'll auto detect blinks, it'll auto detect blurry photos, and then suggest what it thinks is the best photo. And then I'm still really picky and will go through and review everything the AI has done because I don't fully trust it. But that's huge as a time saver. And then the other one as well that I would use with large weddings is AI editing, where basically I was able to upload tens of thousands of photos that I had fully edited myself. And it's now built a profile that can take a photo from unedited to, I would say, about 70% of the way there. Again, I'm a perfectionist. I don't let it do all the work. I still will review every single photo individually. But it's allowed me to focus a lot more on helping my clients and kind of putting my energy in areas that isn't doing the really mundane sitting and clicking as I process 700 photos. And so it's been a huge help. And yeah, I'd love to hear what Gab and Wes think, but that's been how it's kind of influencing me.
Okay, I'm like, mind blown. Right? All right, Gab, Wes, go ahead.
Yeah, echoing a little bit of that, I definitely use AI tools in my editing process and that kind of thing. I use Adobe for a lot of my editing and content and things that I do. So even just tiny things built into these tools, there's like better healing and removing objects and like little things like that that you can do every day. Even like if you're doing brush strokes on an image, or you're in Photoshop or Lightroom, let's say, and it'll like auto select the subject for you or auto select the sky for you, and it's almost perfect. So it's great, and it saves, like, I just think back to a couple of years ago when I would literally hand brush like little trees. Like it would take hours and hours and hours, and now you can just like click a button and it does it for you. So very happy to have that. Those kind of tools are super helpful for time saving and also just like headaches and what have you. So I definitely see a big future for that type of AI support in my life and in a lot of other creatives' lives. And I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of like, the fear of taking jobs away and like how it affects graphic design and all these other careers as well. And there was an example that someone had given me a while ago in a previous job that was not relevant to photography at all. And they used the example of how horses were kind of like an everyday supporting thing. Everyone had a horse, you used it for travel, whatever. And then the car was invented, and everyone had a car, and no one rode horses anymore or used like horse-drawn carriages anymore. And tractors were invented, so you didn't need horses in the field anymore. And suddenly horses became a luxury thing, and rich people did equestrian. And so you had this kind of like just evolution in where things exist in society. And I do see, like, maybe this is just me being hopeful, but I do see that, like, if someone wants a headshot, they want to AI generate it, that's totally fine. It's probably going to look beautiful and it'll work for LinkedIn. But someone being able to say like, oh, well, I had a professional photographer come in and do analog photography for me and my family. And that suddenly seems so special. And I don't see it going away. I'm not fearful that I'm gonna like lose my job. I almost see it like as a benefit in the end a little bit, where if you're good at your craft, people are gonna see the value in it, and it might even be more valuable in the future because it's so easy to do the simple stuff with technology.
Love the analogy. That's awesome. Wes, what about you in your world?
I don't think I have too much to add to that. I think that it touches a lot on what I wanted to say. But yeah, I think that it's a bit of what Gab's saying, a bit of what Zack was saying, is like, if you're able to use it to your advantage to spend more time focusing on the relationship, getting to know your subject, the storytelling side of it, your craft, your in what you're doing, and less about the things that you don't enjoy or you're not very good at. Yeah, it's a huge benefit, and it's definitely continuing to just push the envelope for our industry and any other industry. The human versus AI generated content, like, that's gonna definitely be a thing. It could be regulated in the future, so like, who knows, but I think that there will always be a need for the human input in what we do to express ourselves. Like, an AI will never be able to take that away, I don't think.
And just to tack on the end there, the human element, I had someone ask me like what they thought about job security, and at least insofar as weddings, and like technology taking over, I'm like, well, the only thing that could replace me is some kind of like autonomous drone with a camera, but that would be terrifying. Like, who wants like a robot like flying around on your wedding day? And so I think that human element is something that like is irreplaceable, and I would actually ascribe like probably like 90% of my business success to me being a people person, not necessarily to my photos being good. And so I think that human element, like, you just can't get rid of that.
Yeah, no, that's a terrific perspective, and bringing it back to, you know, your very first example, Zach, of the thousands of photos and being able to eliminate the ones with, you know, eyes closed or like shadows or whatever. Like that's a brilliant application of this evolution that is happening, whether we like it or not, right? Of course, during that whole conversation, I'm thinking back to when I was like 10, pulling photo albums out of a trunk. And I'm like, when I'm 10, I still do it, right? So I'm looking for a photo. Oh, look, my eyes are closed. Anyway, and I'm not surprised, but here it is at 8 o'clock. It's actually a couple of minutes after 8 o'clock. Once again, you know, not enough time to cover the content. I have at least 4 more questions that I didn't get to. So indicative of all of the topics that we've had in the virtual space and these programs or these conversations that we're able to share with our alumni community. So I thank you, each of you, for your time and for sharing your time and your talent with us this evening. I'll let you know when the video is ready and up. Please go easy on us in terms of the editing, Wes, when we're ready with the final product. And for folks online and our guest speakers, our next virtual event will be on October 30th, and it's a Q&A with our new president, the 17th president of Acadia University, who is a musician and brings lots of other skills and cool attributes to the job. So feel free to join in and be involved in that Q&A. Thank you to folks on the line for sharing your evenings with us. And I look forward to following up with the 3 speakers afterwards, and wish you all the best in your endeavors and what your next stage looks like in each of your careers.